you?
Good, good. Great to see you after a long time. I
It
won't I
has.
won't say how many years because we're both still 35.
That's
So
right. We don't age a bit. Security forces does not do that to you at all.
no, no, no. I'm still 34.
That's right. Well, for people who have not had a chance to read your book, which I definitely encourage to do so, Chief Simmons, well, you were Master Sergeant, then Senior Master Sergeant, right in that transition as I had moved to Lakenheath. You were one of the senior NCOs at RAF Lakenheath. So I want to give people an opportunity to hear a little bit about your military service, where you have been, how long you served. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, I appreciate it, Lindsay. Great seeing you and all the great things that you have done since I've been following you. Huge fan. I love to see people living their best life, and you definitely have. So,
Thank you.
for your audience, Todd Simmons, I joined the Air Force in 1994. So, I recently retired, coming up on 2 years. So, I did about 25 years, 7 months, 14 days, and some hours. I never counted the time I was in the Air Force,
Wow.
but I did 25 years. Started out security forces at Maxwell Air Force Base, which is Air University down in Montgomery, Alabama. And I left there after a year and spent 17 consecutive years overseas between Europe and PACAF. So I left Montgomery, went to Lakenheath, and for 17 years moved back and forth for PACAF, Japan, England, served the deployment time in the Middle East, and did a year in the Middle East on a PCS. And came back to the States in Colorado Springs and kind of stayed CONUS after that, except another year tour to the desert.
Right.
and went back. It was kind of weird, the bookends, right? I started Air University as a young 18-year-old kid, and then I ended my career 25 years later at Air University as a 34-year-old. Ended my career later at Air University, which was great. Two bookends as the command chief of Air University, which is the senior enlisted leader for education development for the Air Force. So It was so weird, being a small town kid. I'm originally from a small town, Hardyville, South Carolina, 6,000 people. And coming into the Air Force as a defender and doing 20 years as a cop, and then going into the leadership track where I was command chief at Edwards Air Force Base, and then moved on to Air University where I retired. It was just a great run. I tell you, a kid who never was on an airplane until 1994, going to San Antonio, to have visited 47 countries and to be able to opportunity to have seen great things, and to meet my wife at RAF Mildenhall, my first time at Lakenheath.
Wow.
As two A1Cs who knew each other 120 days.
Oh, wow.
And got married.
That's fast.
and she's still here in the house with me right now.
She's an amazing lady.
so long journey, two kids, 20 and a 25-year-old, doing great things, and it's just been a great ride, great military ride, great memories. Even the opportunity to what I do now in my civilian career, to stay really closely connected to the military, is still a great honor that I get to still do that. So it's been awesome.
Good. It's always awesome to see people use their service from the military as service in the community and around the world, and to still carry that on. I think that's an important characteristics that people need to have. So thank you for continuing your service, and your wife's service as well.
Oh, no, thank you.
That mill-to-mill life can be challenging. I definitely understand that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So I'm excited to hear some of the story that you have chosen to talk to us about today. And I feel like we got a really good glimpse in your book. People can explore more with your book, but I look forward to hearing from you what you have chosen to highlight. Can you tell us a little bit about which story you've chosen, how this occurred, and the significance of this particular scar?
Okay. I think I chose my airman story, correct?
Yes.
And I know I gave you a few, I think, but yeah, my airman story. And when I say my airman story, for those of you who are military or Air Force, or when I say airman, I really want to capitalize the big A, because it may have happened when I had the rank of airman, but it's something that stays with me even to this second, as I talk with you. And for me, 19, I grew up in a small town, like I said, and I won't plug the book too much, but the long story is in the book, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I grew up in a small town. I faced a whole lot of challenges before I joined the United States Air Force. So anything from mental to physical abuse to just the lack of self assurance, or the awareness of, actually a little bit of lack of self awareness of things that I did not receive. So at an 18-year-old kid, I kind of gave myself, I would, looking back now, it's 45, I'm not 34, but looking back at 45 years old, I look back, man, that 18-year-old kid was living a life of probably a 35-year-old, right? From mentality wise, but not a skill wise, not a how the world really worked. So when I joined the Air Force, I was escaping, like a lot of young people I've met throughout my time in the military. I was escaping a whole lot of trauma, a whole lot of trauma, a whole lot of abuse, a whole lot of things that was said to me, done to me. I had limited to no real things to offer the Air Force that I thought. And one of those things was I didn't come from a great education background. I failed the 4th grade, I failed the 9th grade, and I was a high school dropout. So I know in my introduction, I said I led education for the Air Force before I retired. So I want to put a disclaimer on that. I did a lot of work in between those bookings.
Right.
The Air Force has a great education program.
Yes.
But when I came in the Air Force, I've never read a book cover to cover. Never read a book. I floated through high school. My school district was the last in the state. And it was basically one of those things where, you showed up and got passed through, right? You have to really work hard at failing. So I really worked hard at failing in 9th grade. Like I had to put effort into that. I came in the military and immediately I saw my deficit. I saw that it's a lot of things I didn't know, and I struggled with a lot of things, and I didn't know I had essentially a learning disability, right? That on top of all of those things. So I came in the military, and actually, I went to basic military training and did very well. There were some scars, there were some things there that I noticed that I had to come, I came from this environment that I really knew how to handle, right? I knew how to handle if somebody wanted to harm me. I knew how to handle all of these things. I had this education in that world, right? But I didn't have this education in the world that I didn't understand. So I came in the military and I had a couple of hiccups in BMT, basic military training, but it really was just cultural issues where I didn't understand some of the people who I was now dealing with and some of the things that I was facing. So I progressed, not to make this a long story, but I progressed through basic military training. I progressed through technical training, which I did well in those things because I was persistent. One thing that I knew I had as a young man is I have a work ethic and I have persistence, and I'm gonna go after whatever it is that I have to do. So I did well, showed up to my first base in Maxwell Air Force Base, February 10th, 1995. I never forget that day. 10 Feb, 1995. I showed up to Maxwell Air Force Base, no stripes, service dress, in process the unit. And I'll never forget in processing the unit, which I'll bring into the story in a second. And I came into the unit immediately, don't have a car. I came in with my little gym bag of a couple of shirts. I came in the Air Force with 2 shirts and a pair of jean shorts. That's the only thing.
Wow.
When I showed up to basic training, I had 2 shirts, a jean shorts I had on, and some personal hygiene items. And that's literally what I brought into the Air Force. That's it. So when I showed up to my first base, I had a couple of more pairs of pants that I bought in the BX. So when I say I started with nothing in the Air Force, literally nothing. So I came there. And so long story short, about 3 months into me being at Maxwell Air Force Base, I was doing well. I figured I was happy to be in the Air Force. I felt that, man, I'm going to try to make a life out of this thing. I'm going to try to, progress. They're paying me my $300 every 2 weeks. So, man, I'm rich. I'm going to do everything in life with this $300. Yeah. But so just one day, to be honest with you, one day I faced a challenge that I won't say I wasn't ready for. I just had so many baggage that I was carrying with me, so many things I was carrying with me. I had trust issues. I had all of these things that were going on in my life. And I trusted everyone at this point.
Yeah.
But I was outside of my squadron break room, and I overheard some men talking. And essentially, overheard three men talking about conspiring against what I considered conspiring against me and two other airmen.
Hmm.
And for me, it was like, what, this is the United States Air Force. People don't do that. People don't. Everyone, no matter what color we are, no matter where we came from. I read that somewhere, and it said, we treat everybody equal. We do all of these things. It doesn't matter. We all have this uniform on and we're all the same.
Yeah.
And I really believed that as an 18-year-old kid. And that wasn't true. And I found out that wasn't true.
Hmm.
And it was people who I trusted. And they didn't look like me. And that's okay. But it's people who I trusted. And I went into a whole couple of weeks of spiraling. And if you take it back 8 months before that, I was in situations where I thought people wanted to take my life before I came in the military. So I literally had all these, when you break trust, it had something different that triggered my mind.
Yeah.
Right. It went to that fight or flight kind of thing. But fight or flight for me in the civilian world is now different than fight or flight in the military world. There's no getting away. I'm in the military, and these people have a control over me that I never felt, because people now have a control. So I actually went into a spiral where I felt like there was no way out. And I found myself in a patrol car one day with a rifle in my mouth. I found myself and I was like, wow, I've been through all of these things in life, and I've survived all of this stuff in life, and this is where I'm at. And I literally the first day kind of like freaked myself out and got away from the situation. And then the next day they posted me on the same post. And then the next day I actually put a round in the chamber, and I actually put the selector on fire, and I actually started squeezing the trigger.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know to this day, they teach us trigger pull and all of this stuff and pounds of pressure. I think it was just pure divine intervention or some kind of dumb luck or whatever, or dirty weapon, something you can pick your pick. Why I'm still here talking to you, because I squeezed that, I always thought about that as I fired weapons the next 20 something years, that I squeezed that trigger, and I remember weapons going off with enough trigger pull where I squeezed those triggers. And just, I probably went halfway to a trigger pull, and it could have went off. So yeah, I never forget. I can remember everything. I can still remember the smell of the carbon because I had the weapon in my mouth and I was inhaling the carbon. I can remember everything from that day. And I just stopped and I got out, and I never forget, I was guarding a C-130, and I got out and I walked around that C-130 and I was hysterically crying, and I didn't know what to do. And I just did not know what to do. And I got back in the car and I made it through that day. And the next day, I just could not go back to work, right? I couldn't do it again. So I called the one person I trusted, and I called my mom. And I told her if she doesn't come pick me up, I'm going to kill myself. And that was very unfair because my mom never left really the state of South Carolina or Georgia or, whatever. So she couldn't come pick me up. So, and I remember being in a phone booth, which most people don't know what that is today, before cell phones. I remember being in a phone booth, and I remember tearing that phone booth up. I remember ripping that phone booth up because I could not get out of the phone booth. I could not get out of it. It just said, the phone booth has I think it says pull, but I was pushing, and I tore it up and I cut my arms up. I still have some scars on my hands. And that night, my first sergeant was doing a dorm walkthrough, and he happened to come in and see this bloody 19-year-old airman yelling and screaming and tearing up this phone booth. And I remember this to this day, and I can feel the emotion. It's like he chose words carefully, what he said to me. And in the 90s, I came in, people used to use 4-letter words very, very freely.
Sure.
And I expected that. I didn't trust anybody. I had the rooted trust in my organization. And he came to me, and I was staring. We had a stare off. And he said, "How can I help?"
Oh my gosh.
I didn't, and it immediately disarmed me. Because I was prepared for the fight. He's going to say this. Mm-hmm. And I prepared for and he disarmed me. And to fast forward a little bit, that man really saved my life. And he didn't save my life that night. He saved and gave me a life. Because I went through mental health. That was my first really official inject into mental health. I didn't have healthcare where I came from. So I went to mental health, very skeptical. I really didn't enjoy the mental health process. I'm just going to be honest with you. And what I found more soothing to me, not for the religious reason of it, is I found for over 20 years in the military, I found the chaplain to be my saving grace.
Mm.
That was just for me,
Yeah.
right? Because it was, for me, trust is a very big thing. And I felt if I trusted this, I trusted that I found chaplains that I can trust. So fast forward, this first sergeant got me help. And 4 months after that incident where I was on the flight line wanting to take my life, I found myself in the first sergeant office and him saying, hey, let's go to Saudi Arabia together. I'm going to get the commander to approve you to go to Khobar Tower, Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. I'm deploying there. They got 2 airman slots. I want to take you with me. And I'm like, they're not going to let me go. They don't even let me carry a gun here. They're going to let me carry a gun in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Right.
So he convinced the major, my commander, to allow me to go to Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And it was the beginning of Todd Simmons. Wow. It was the beginning of my life. And this man picked me up, and I'll end the story with this. This man picked me up every 4 or 5 days that I was off. And he picked me up and he took me down for 3 months. He did this down to a restaurant, same restaurant, Chinese restaurant in Saudi Arabia. And we ate Chinese food. And this was the first time a male had taken an interest in me in a positive way.
That's incredible.
That I've had my brother-in-law that really tried, but this is I saw this man as somebody who I could be, right? And he just talked to me, didn't talk about the military. We had conversations. And at the end of that conversation, Lindsay, he pulled out a napkin, a simple dispense napkin from what we were wiping our mouths with in hands. And he started writing down on this napkin, and he wrote 8 bases down. Mm-hmm. And he started going through these bases for at least an hour. And he started talking about all of these stories. And man, I was in Japan and I can't remember. And I remember this, and I used to do this. And he went through that and he went through it. And long story short, at the end, he said, when we get back to Alabama, we're going to get you to one of these bases. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. I didn't know how the Air Force worked. 19 years old, I have one strike. And we get back and we fill out the dream sheet, and 367 days from the day I came into that squadron and in processed, I was out processing that squadron.
Wow.
And I was headed to RAF Lakenheath.
How about that?
And for 17 years, I followed that napkin. Everything I did I had great leaders interject in my life. Mm-hmm. But but I've always fallen. In 17 years, I stayed overseas following that napkin. But I will tell you, for me, the biggest thing is I carried that scar with me today, right? And I will be honest with you, 1995 wasn't my darkest moment. It was a dark moment. I literally have had those dark moments at least a half a dozen times throughout my life in the Air Force. Mm. But what that taught me at 19 is when someone cares about you, or it taught those feelings I had, those emotions I had that someone invested in me, or those emotions I had when I knew I was there. I knew I needed to go run to get help. And I always tell people now, for me, the yellow caution light comes on for me when I'm at 75%. Like, all of us strive to live at 100%, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the caution light for me is at 75. When I'm feeling like just down, or I'm feeling in my worst moment, I know I need to get help. I didn't have those skills at 19. And that's how I know I ended up in a vehicle with a rifle in my mouth. And I'm very careful about myself. I'm very careful about my self-care. I'm very careful about my emotions. And we talked a little bit, and we got some history, and I wrote it all in the book. And I tell people from the outside looking in, man, you would think I had a storybook life and a storybook career in the Air Force, which I had a great career. Right. But I tell people probably 75 to 80% of my career in the Air Force, 25 years, I've been under some mental health, treatment and I acknowledge that as that's okay. That's not a negative. That is fine. And you can still make it. And I had a great career, and I made the top rank in the Air Force, and things were great. But I took care of myself. Just like I went to the dentist, just like I did anything else, I also took care of my mental health. So, no, that's kind of a nutshell of the story.
It's a great story. It's really incredible. You have so many different items that have happened to you. I mean, from the situation with the leaders that you thought you could trust to that being completely eroded in a matter of moments. I mean, but then to be able to build that back up with somebody that really took an interest in you. So do you keep in contact with this gentleman, or did you keep in contact with him over the years?
So what is so funny about that? I left that base in 1996 and never spoke to him again.
Really?
But for 17 years, I followed a laminated napkin as a roadmap to my life to a man I didn't speak to since 1996. So when we talk about impact on people's lives,
yes,
we never know the small moments that become absolutely impactful moments to people's lives, right? We consider them small, like going into a Starbucks today and talking to a barista while they're making your coffee may be that transitional moment in someone's life.
That's incredible to, man, for him to know at some point over the years what this has done to you. That is so amazing. So how did these scars impact you either physically or mentally then versus now?
Well, physically, then of course I have scars, and physical scars and mental scars. How it impacted me then is it was shame then.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that shame is, I wear it as a cape for others. I wear it as a superpower. So what was shameful now is my biggest asset, my biggest superpower, my biggest gift in life, because I see it as a gift that I can give to others who are in pain, that I can go, hey, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I get it. It's dark right now, right? But there is some light out there. There are people who will stand next to you and will walk the entire walk with you, will walk the whole process with you, that there's a life. And that was the whole basis of me spending a year writing that book. It wasn't about, oh, I want to write a book about my life and have it on paper for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
It was through exactly what I just said. One day I just got fed up with what at the time I was working on some projects for suicide and resiliency in the Air Force. I just got fed up from my interpretation of what we were doing, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
And it was a lack of realness and rawness. And I'm like, what I didn't see is anybody saying that, you know what, things ain't great sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was a lack of that. And it was especially a lack of that from people who have essentially made it with stripes or bars or leaderships.
Sure.
So I got on stage one day when I was supposed to be given an education brief and decided to turn my slides off and give a, hey, I tried to kill myself at one point brief. And this is who I am. This is the scar. This is who I am. This is what I just struggled with. Literally, I was in mental health last week before I talked to you 600 people. And I got all these things.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay to have those things.
Yeah. I want you to see who I am. I want you to see what I work to be. I want you to see that this smiles and happiness is actually real today.
Yeah.
But last week it wasn't.
Right.
And I wanted to show that. And then I had a young man, actually had 30 people come up to me afterwards. And one of them was the second in charge of the base, like 06. And I had to take him behind the stage, essentially. He was crying. And it was because so many things that he's been just burying, and it triggered something that day in him. And I had a young man who grew up 10 miles away from me who said that you were talking about me. And I just, light bulb moment that day, I said, what am I ashamed of, right? Like, what do I have to be ashamed of?
Right.
Like this is people's lives. So I spent the last 2 years, almost 2 years of my time in the Air Force. That's all I talked about. Like if I went on, I was supposed to travel all over the Air Force to talk about education. And I was like, gotcha. I'm gonna talk about education.
Yeah, that's
got,
awesome.
got all three of you in this auditorium. Fooled you. But I never got a negative response. And
yeah, that is just amazing to know that. Well, I mean, just to come from the educational standpoint, that is in itself education. It's personal education to help somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was about resiliency. You know, I had an Air Force level. I had a suicide summit before I retired. We spent a bunch of money, and I brought a lot of people in, and I just wanted to have honest conversations. So, you know, you asked me where do I see it? Then I see a scared little kid from Hardyville, South Carolina, who had absolutely no value in his mind to the world, or thought he had anything to offer to the world. And you know, I had physical scars, mental scars. I had all of it, and today I still wear both of those proudly. It's just now I transition into, I know I can offer something to the world. I know I have a superpower. I may still struggle reading sometime, but that's not my superpower. My gift to the world is that I'm going to ensure that someone hears that it's okay, and someone sees that there are things that you can do in life, even if you started at the worst place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's got purpose of some sort.
Absolutely. Everyone has a reason to be here, and everyone has a gift. I believe that. I believe everyone has a gift. I've learned more from homeless people than I've learned from professors in college.
Wow. Do you think some of this is pride getting in the way of acknowledging who we really are? Or what do you think is a barrier to people acknowledging their own shame and just being honest about it?
It's somewhat pride, and it's pride. It can be cultural, but the biggest piece is that society has said that it's not cool, right?
Yeah.
And that, you know, like, and I used to ask the question of, you know, we put people in this box when we start talking about mental health. But, you know, like for me, I used to do weird things at work, and well, people say they were weird. I normalized them, right? Like, you remember being noticed, we have to put our appointments out there. We'll tell people we're gone, or if I'm going to the dental appointment, everybody will shout out, hey, I'm going to dental. If I'm going to get my PH, hey, I got to go. We'll talk about taking a PT test till the cows go home. Oh man, I got to take my PT test. Oh God, this is coming.
Right.
And when it comes to mental health, we will bury that thing 6 feet deep.
Yep.
We will bury that 6 feet. We rather tell people what we are going to alcohol and drug treatment before we tell people we're going to mental health. Like literally, I've done my own internal surveys. Like I've had people openly like, oh yeah, I got marriage counseling, I got ADAP coming up. And I'm like, you know, I got all these, but they will never say mental health, right? No one will say that. And I'm like, we have honestly shamed people into thinking that some reason that's no different than going to get, you know, anything else fixed on your body or anything else health, you know, wise. It's a health thing. So I think society as a whole is for decades and probably 100 years, and you know, has made it something that people feel that they should be ashamed of, but absolutely should not be ashamed of. And I think that was what leads to people to suffer in silence, and to lead to people to essentially have that pressure cooker cooking inside of them.
Yeah.
That, you know, and that's a dangerous thing. Because I've found that, you know, like I said, if I'm 75%, and I openly talk, I mean, I think me and my wife been together long, but I wake up in the morning sometimes like, you know what, I feel this way, you know, or, you know, or just to be able to say how you feel, just to be able to be like your friends, you know, like one of my friends is a very big influential person in the Air Force when we both were in. I didn't feel any shame by telling him. He called me one day and offered me a great job. And I said, just not in the headspace for that right now.
Wow.
Not in the headspace, and I'm not in the family headspace for that right now. But I was okay with doing that. You know, I left a BHOP appointment, which is a behavior health appointment in the Air Force one day. And that was a funny appointment because I walked into my appointment And I just was oblivious at this point to, because I was normalizing. I was in my blues uniform with these big white stripes and command chief star on. And I walked up to the desk to check into my appointment. And this young airman first class looks at me like, my picture's up everywhere. He knows exactly who I am. He's looking at me like, what should I be doing right now? Like, and he's like, so what are you here for? You need to see somebody? Like, you here for a visit? No, I have an appointment. And he's looking at me like
and I'm you have an appointment?
Like, you have like he's like, with my chief? Who do you need to talk to? Dude, I have an appointment with the therapist. Like, dude, I'm here to see somebody. Wow. He was just completely mesmerized and blown away. And I actually saw that as some shame, because I'm like, leaders are hiding their issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
If this A1C just sitting here completely floored that I'm even in this building trying to go get help, he's like, because that isn't supposed to happen, right?
Right.
Because you have to have everything together. You're in charge. Like, no, this can't happen. You know?
Yes. Yes.
But you know what? I would go into the med group and go to my dental appointment in that same uniform and don't think anything of it. So my whole goal was to try to dispel this myth that you're some kind of weak person, or you can't make it in life, or this is some sort of shame you should be. No, it's an appointment for my brain.
Yes.
I just got my teeth appointment. And this is my brain appointment. So I need my brain. I mean, like, dude, it's just, it's normal. Stop. Everybody stop.
I love that. That is so important. In today's day and age, and I wish it could have been like that decades ago, where we didn't push things under the rug and think, oh, I'm going to be discharged because I got, there's something not right. Or leaders don't go through these things. But I think that is the very act of servant leadership, is showing and acknowledging, I may not be okay today. I could be tomorrow, but you know, things are changing. It's fluid. Your mind is a fluid object, and it just always changes, these thoughts and these feelings. And it's not something that just because you've made it at one position, you still don't have traumas or situations that have impacted you to this day. And I mean, that is just, that is a pivotal moment, I think, for leaders to understand. You have got to treat yourself first before you can really help others. You got to come from a full cup. And so from that appointment, how do you feel like you were able to continue with the rest of your career? Do you feel like that was really something that stood out in your mind? I mean, you're talking about it, so I feel like that is something that, you know, light bulb there too.
Yeah, it did start. You know, another thing, after my appointment, I was very active on social media as a chief.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when I walked out of my appointment, I went and recorded a video on my Area University command chief. I was walking like literally with the phone, really unauthorized, like walking to my car. And I was talking, and it's still, a video's still up somewhere. And I was talking about, I just left my appointment, and, you know, man, you know, and I was just talking about it. And, you know, it had like 50,000 views, but I was just talking about it. I did a couple of those videos. I left my PHA, and I was talking about how I lied on my PHA for over 2 decades and how we need to be honest. I said, look, we go on our PHA, and we have that one question at the bottom to say, mentally, how are we feeling from 1 to 10? And we always, and I said, I tested the system today. I actually told them how I really was feeling, and I freaked out the whole medical system.
As a command chief, you did that. Wow.
Oh, as the command chief, I literally circled a 3, and I gave it back to him. And again, poor airman, he was looking at this form like,
because everybody knows that everybody lies on it. Nobody's actually honest about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did it that day. And it was, again, the process, I felt really bad, because I'm like, again, that's how I was introduced to the BHOP.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the process was. Again, failure as a leader, right? What happens if you put three on this form? What happens?
Yes. Yes.
So I put 3 on the phone. It wasn't an exercise. This is really how I feel today. It was stressful, right? I was just making that decision to retire. It was a lot of weight on my shoulders. I had my family, and then my kids were my oldest daughter was in college. It was just a lot going on. And I just, man, I went, I remember my exec, she had on my calendar for me to go. It was supposed to be a quick 30-minute appointment. I was doing all my appointments for some things, and I ended up being over there for like 3 hours. And she was like blowing my cell phone up, like, "Where are you? Are you okay?" And I just said, "I'm okay." But the process was, that's how I got introduced. In my whole career, I'd never been to the B-Hop. They went through and they were freaking out, of course. They all came out, leaders came out, like, everything's okay, everything's fine. You told me to fill out this form, I filled it out.
That's right. That's right.
They ended up getting me out back to the B-Hop, like in there immediately. And it turned out to be such a phenomenal hour of my life.
Wow.
Like, just to talk about things, right? Because we talk about that pressure cooker, right?
Mm-hmm.
That could have been just a low pressure, that something else could have happened, and this adds and adds. And that's how life becomes, right? It builds on you, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people it's a rucksack. I always show this picture in my presentations about how much are you carrying when you just keep adding things in there. You just keep throwing more things. And it was just a great hour. And she gave me some things to kind of reframe some things, because I was having almost anxiety, like, over all of these things that were about to come into my life.
Right.
My military career was about to be over, and I made the decision, and I was like, and it's the decision I can't go back on. I already told the 3-star general, "Hey, sir, I'm out." And so I tell you, it was such a moment. It was like, man, why don't we use these services?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we shy away from these services? Why do we not just go get help when a part of me that really was like, man, we are so fortunate to have access to this.
Yes. Oh gosh.
So many Americans in this country do not have access, first of all, to healthcare, but then mental health care.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, man, how are we not taking advantage of these services? And the B-Hop, the B-Hop, the therapist, she said something to me that really resonated with me. And with this is, and that part of that is, she said, "I've never in 13 years had somebody at your rank in my office."
What?
Yes.
That's astounding.
That showed me the gravity of the issue. The gravity of what people are perceiving that they can't go talk about, or that it's going to have some hindrance on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, and I told her, I said, when I was retiring, I told some folks, I said, we don't, a lot of mental health records is not kept, according to who you're going to, which for good reason. Like, if you go to Chaplain, they don't keep records. So you go to MFLAC, they don't keep records. I said, but they keep everything when you go to the medical, right? So I said, when you retire, when you got, they give you your medical records, right?
Yep.
I said, if they could give me my mental health records, if they recorded everything, which I'm glad they don't, my mental health records would be thicker than my medical records. And I said, I've gotten more of that help than I've probably gotten medical help. And I for, physical things. And I said, I would have loved to have shown that as a picture, because I had a TS clearance when I retired, top secret clearance. I retired as command chief. I was in 25 years as a chief for 7 years. And I was 20-year mental health patient. And if you can't call that being successful with having what we perceive as issues, then I don't know what the metric we're measuring. Amazing. So people need, and then again, it's about the next chapter. I'm not in the military anymore. I'm a civilian. And too many people retire by letting that pressure cooker cook up, and then they get into this side of the house and they can't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I think, being out almost 2 years, the life that I've been able to enjoy now is because of the work I've done then. And the work continues, but the work I did then is now on me to smile now. I smile more in pictures than I ever smiled before in my life.
And it's never too late. It is never too late.
It's never too late. I'm finding new purpose every day, finding something to reorientate myself in every day.
Yes, yes. So how has that healing journey been?
It's long, right? Because I went through it. I retired. I thought I was in a and I'm in a good place, but I thought, this is, a lot of things I put to bed, and that part, I reconciled with some people. Some things still are out there, and then I decided to write a book. And I'm telling you, Lindsay, a lot of things. So the process of me writing that book is I had to record everything first, right? I just recorded all my thoughts. So I have, I don't know, 50 hours. I have a lot of hours of recordings.
Yeah.
So, and the thing about recording, and the therapeutic thing about that, it brought up a lot of things that I haven't remembered in 30 years.
Sure.
And it brought up sensory things. It brought up smells of my house burning down when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
It brought up the memories of things I don't even remember, of living next to a cemetery, or being this and that, or different abuse things that happen. It just brought up some very, very, very good and bad things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that, it allowed me, honestly, a second chance to do the real work that I still have not completed, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's a process, right? But it has allowed me to really dig down deep into some things of, this is why you are the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
Good things, and some things that probably, why you react to some things in the way you do, and how you can probably get help for that. So it's a lifetime journey. I tell people, if you're not looking to change and be better your whole life, and I tell you, it can be fun. It might not, what I said might not sound fun, but it can be kind of fun, because self-discovery is a good thing, right? Like I love walking in the morning. I go and walk around my neighborhood, and that's like the time of such clarity in my mind, and thinking about things that I want to do, and thinking about, and becoming more actionable, I think, is what I've done in the work, right? Is becoming more actionable about being purposeful about the things that I let my mind imagine, but actually putting it into action. Being more present for my kids, being more present with my wife. Don't say, oh, I wish we would have went on more vacations. No, go on more vacations.
Yeah, do it. Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have more conversations with my kids. Well, have more conversations with your kids. I wish I would, be able to cut people out of my life who just don't, toxic, or don't add that value that I keep having. Oh, once you just tell them that that's what they do to your life, and give them the choice, and they don't comply, you just go on.
That's right.
So I've been just being more actionable about things in the last 2 years. I mean, extremely deliberately actionable, and it has made me happy.
Oh gosh, how liberating. I'm just you're just shedding this weight that you carried for years.
Yeah, you just and I still have a lot of work to do. My next step is some close family members, to be honest with you. That's the biggest leap that if I have fear, I have to take that leap, right? It's some close family members that I have to, and I think that's the thing I haven't been actionable with, and that's the thing that I'm letting time go by too much. So there's some things I'm trying to do here soon with one family member, and some things I'm trying to do with another, to close some chapters that's it's been open way too long.
Absolutely. And seeing what you are doing as a leader in your position, I feel like that you're probably the first in the history of the military in general to be this truthful and honest about where you've been, where you are, especially whenever you were active duty. Do you feel like because you work with, and a lot of high level people, has anybody followed suit or talked to you about this since then?
Yeah, I think so. Now, we got a lot of work to do. Sure. I am trying to, and I don't even give myself credit for it. But I do see, being active on social media like I wasn't being. I do even today. I get a lot of people who talk about, man, used to do this stuff on, I won't say crazy stuff, but but I've seen people more comfortable in leadership positions, I've seen more people. I won't put his name out there because he's a active, but I was very impressed with this Colonel '06 who actually leads a group right now. And
Wow.
he talks to me at least once or twice a week. And he worked with me. He was with me at Area University when he saw me doing all this stuff.
Amazing.
And he's in a leadership position of a whole group. And he's taken that task on and challenged his squadron commander. He's been out there. They have leadership series where they're talking about their struggles and stuff. And he even had one of their generals come down and do some video. So, I'm very impressed with him and wanting to understand that is a powerful tool to be truthful, to be honest, to tell people who you are as a person. And you know what? They'll follow you. They'll still follow you. We want to follow real people.
Absolutely. That's the truth.
And I said, and I see a lot more senior enlisted leaders that are willing to do that. And I follow a few and I still speak in this space, right? So in the military, and I travel a little bit doing this, but I do see a lot of bases having storytellers now and doing things like that. I know a couple of bases just had one this week. I saw it on social media, and I'm like, when I see the younger airmen and the mid-level NCOs because they want to, that's where the normalization is going to come, right? Yes. I call us graybeards. Us graybeards, we're whatever. If we do it, great. It's great if we do it. But the younger generation, they want to talk about it, and they feel okay talking about it. So when we have our young airmen, even as non-military, our young people, younger 20s and late 20s and 30s they're just comfortable with talk. I've been to a storyteller in Hawaii and it was so powerful. Like, these are young people, they're ready to get up there and they're ready to talk about their trauma. They're ready to talk about their work they're doing. They're ready to really be those beacons like, hey, and I'm like, in 10 years, it's like anything, right? Things come in cycles. In 10 years, the dental appointment will be on the board and then mental health will be on right next to it.
Yeah.
People will be coming in the office talking about, yeah, man, I had my BOP appointment today, or, man, what counselor at mental health do you recommend? We'll be asking those questions in offices. I think in the military standpoint, I think in society, we have outside the gates, we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
To not only from normalization, but for access. The access is there in the military. The normalization is not there. So I believe that I'm very proud of what I see, but change is not immediate in anything. And I just think that what you are doing, and people like you and people, like me and other folks are in this space, we're continuing to put light to it. It's going to normalize it. And that's where we're going to see the biggest change in the stats of suicide is when we normalize people's pain. And when that pressure cooker doesn't have to go overboard, right? When people can normalize it, I'm only feeling 40% today. Oh, red light.
Yes.
And when we normalize vulnerability and we normalize trust, when I can talk about this openly, then I'm willing to be in the office and just look at you and go, man, I'm just not, this ain't me today. I used to do that with folks. I'm Command Chief Area University. I just walk in some days and slump down. They'd be like, this ain't it today. And when you build a relationship and connection, true connection and relationships with people, they can really recognize it. And I'm like, we have superficial relationships in this world, right?
Yes.
We're always sizing people up for the transaction. And when you really just, want to get to know people for being a human being, then the relationships will change, the connection will change, the trust will be established. And the first thing you're going to want to do is really help me as a human versus compete with me as a human.
Yeah. Yeah. The number of times I swear I thought in the 6 years of going to guard mount, getting my weapon, I just thought, man, I am not feeling it today. And the number of times I wish I could have told somebody, but I didn't trust that somebody would actually take me serious, or that they would think I'm just complaining or whining or whatever, and I'm just feeling sorry for myself, or I don't want to be at work. And I didn't know how to put that into words of today's just not the day. And I'm sorry, I don't know what else to do but I know I'm not going to be here in this 12-hour shift or longer in a good headspace. And, I hate to think the number of times other people had access. I mean, to not just one weapon, but two. I had two weapons almost every day that something could have happened.
Yeah. And unfortunately it does, Lindley. And that's what I say, who taught me that, to be honest with you, is I don't know if I did a good job in the military, really listening to people my whole career, right? Even though I had but I tell you, when Frankfurt happened in our squadron, it really, really enhanced my listening skills.
Yeah.
Right. It enhanced my listening skills to people who now I knew face to face, from this, that was going on. And it shouldn't have taken that, right? It should have been Lindsay and Guard Mount, who you can just come up to me as your flight chief and say, just today ain't today. And I could have been like, we'll work this out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and it seems like the big problem though is, oh great, now what are we gonna do? Now who's gonna be on the gate? Who's gonna be on patrol? Who's gonna do this? There's always, it's like you're putting the asset above the one item in the Air Force that is creating the Air Force in general. It wouldn't be anything without our people. But material things were being placed above my mental health. Yeah. And it's like, how I can't argue with that. What do I do? So I would just suck it up. That's what happened.
And like I say, culture will change, right? And unfortunately, that is I won't even say probably still filters some places, right? Mm-hmm. It's that suck it up mentality. And that's I teach a lot about psychological safety, right? And I think unfortunately I see most of it now on the other end. I always look at it, if you don't create that psychological safe organization where people can feel like they can say and what they need to say, they can have ideas when they need to have ideas, they can speak up about what's going on with them, then most organizations will fail.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're going to close the doors, because the military can't close its doors, right? But it fails in keeping people like you in uniform. It fails in keeping people operating at their optimal best, even when they do stay in. It fails on so many levels. So I don't think there's bad people. I mean, of course, there's probably a small, but majority of the people you encounter who would say that to you, suck it up, they're not bad people. No. They're enculturated. They're part of a culture that has trained them that this is okay. We don't give leaders the training or the necessary, and the culture and the training don't merge together where we feel that is a part of effective leadership. We feel that a part of effective leadership is go, yes. you go. And we never circle back, even if I told you that day, well, we need you to go out there. We never circle back and say, hey, what's going on? Let me come out here and see what's going on with you.
Yeah.
We never and the more you do that, and I can say I was guilty of it too, you become numb to it and it becomes a machine. And people in the cog of machines just happens. And then you don't ever, and then you go out and start becoming fake. You start going out to your post and be like, hey, how are you doing? But you really don't want to hear how you're doing. No. And they know you don't want to hear how they're really doing.
That's true.
And it becomes this fake exchange of information, and everybody is surprised when the balloon pops and somebody has harmed themselves.
And you know what's sad is that whenever I became an NCO, I tried to take on that mentality, and I feel like I was good at it. I was good at rationalizing with my airmen, and I would tell them, look, you and I are talking one-on-one right now. Take off these stripes. This is human interaction. I need you to really talk to me, not as your supervisor, but as a person to person. How can I help you? And the reason that happened is because I remember we had an exercise, and this was literally the whole squadron was participating if you weren't on shift that day. And it was right after I was going through my divorce. And I was just part of guarding the aircraft. I mean, there was a whole circle of us doing the same thing, just standing there. And Stan Eval was coming by, and they were asking all these questions that we should know. Well, they started grilling me. And I was just not in that space. I didn't want to be there. I had all these things going on in my life personally, and I just couldn't focus. And I started getting asked all these questions, and I wasn't able to answer them. They kept saying, well, you should know these things. These are things that you should always know about your job. And I remember I just started crying. And all of a sudden, these two guys were just like, what is happening? What's going on? And I just lost it. And I just started telling them things that had nothing to do with the exercise at all, but just about my personal life. And they're like, oh God, oh no, what did we do? I could see it on their face of just terror. And they're like, are you okay? Do you need to be here? And I was like, no, I'm fine. But I can't answer your questions right now. Like your questions are not important to me. And I get that it's a part of my job, but right now it has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing or where my head is at. So I need to just be right now. And they walked away. And that was it. And I thought, wow, that was probably just as weird for them as it was for me. And now people are going to think I'm crazy, and they're going to think, God, why is she out here? And I just kept going, all these negative things in my mind. But that was the first time, but they didn't do anything. But that was the first time I was able to actually say something, and people took me seriously, but they didn't do anything. They didn't say, okay, you know what? We hear you. Let's take you off. It's just an exercise. Everything here is fake. We can get you replaced. We can close the circle up if we need to, but there wasn't anything after that. And that is what stuck in my mind all these years. Nothing happened after that.
Yeah. And you're talking about the lack of empathy, right? So, and which, again, I always have to give people a disclaimer, boy, because we always should be people that learn things, right? I always felt like I had maybe a little too much, maybe I was always sympathetic, right? But I never was empathetic, which is the actionable piece that you're talking about. I didn't really listen more and feel more and saw what you were talking about there, which really leads into more action when you're an empathetic leader, right?
Yes.
Sympathy, you can be simply like, oh man, I feel sorry for that homeless person as you walk by them.
Yeah.
But I actually teach empathy, a class on, the power of empathetic leadership now. And what you're talking about is such a perfect example of what leaders do, the missed opportunity to actually be empathetic and to actually sit and listen and feel what those two gentlemen probably, to sit there and be like, all right, let me see from her perspective. What is she telling me? What is she, everything you're telling, to be like, okay, let's go. Get in the car, let's go. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that's a hard bridge for people to walk over, because sympathy makes us feel good. Like, oh man, that's too bad. Sorry for your loss. And move on, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't hear from them again, right? And I just think it's a culture that does not really allow that bridge to happen a lot of times, right? Because I read something recently and we've always talked about people are your mission, which is true, right? If you take care of the people, they'll take care of the mission. That's such a simple statement, but it's not an actionable statement all the time.
Sure.
But it was this person was writing about it here recently, and it's just so many things about that's true, but you also have to have the skills to be able to be a leader in an organization that can maneuver that type of culture, right?
Yeah.
And I believe, and I won't call this name, we don't have, but I believe that, the commander I worked with at Lake and Heath, both of them, but the second one, the one I left with,
Mm-hmm.
he had a very good skill at maneuvering those two things.
Yes.
And not every leader has those type of skills, right? Where you can maneuver the people and the mission in the same kind of, you can do what's right, you can have high standards, you can take accountability, but you can always have that people aspect. And I work closely with him, and I know a lot of people, but I will tell you, many 9 o'clock at nights, man, I saw the toll of the people part that it took on him. He was probably the number one empathetic
Yes.
leader that I have ever met. Sympathy is one thing, but man, I saw the toll that it took on him, on the people. Like the face we had to put up during the day, but at night we would sit for 3 hours sometime, and just the decisions and what people were going through, the pain that you feel for others, and how you had to, and you felt helpless sometime, or you felt that you had to make a decision that just was not in the, it was in the best interest of the Air Force, but it was a tough decision.
Yeah.
Right. But I felt like he was one of the most empathetic people I've ever met in uniform. And I don't think he was taught that. And you can't be, and that's not something he was taught. Well, at least not by the military education system. Correct. He might have been taught that in his upbringing, and his own beliefs and stuff. But I think that's a key component that we can't miss in this, right? Is that people in general have to be able to cross that bridge, and people have to see through other people's eyes. And if you don't, you're going to miss it. There's going to be no shortage of people. There's the myth. I mean, people speak up all the time. We always talk about the warning signs of suicide. Mm-hmm. People always speak up, even when it's not even to that level yet. When it's anxiety, if you miss it and just don't want to have that connectors, if they're throwing the line out there. They just want you to, like, can somebody bite?
Yeah.
But when you give people a little, okay, you having a moment, it's gonna be okay, and you walk away. That's you didn't do anything. You actually made it worse. Sometimes you pour gas on the fire.
So true, so true. I remember this empathetic leader, and I felt the exact same way. Thinking, wow, what a breath of fresh air. Somebody who you really felt the caring nature. Mm-hmm. And I remember people saying, "Oh, I think he might just be too soft," and I was like, "Too soft? No, you can tell he's doing a great job in the actual mission, but you can't teach empathy. You can't teach. I mean, it's something that either you have or you don't at that moment." It was amazing to feel that. And more leaders, I feel like, would be so much more effective with that empathy.
Yeah. And you said people who, it's so funny, people thought he was soft. When it came to enforcing standards, he was the toughest person I have ever worked for as a senior CEO.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So that's what really was so impressive to me. Like,
right.
He really, like, would enforce standards.
Yes.
Like unapologetically enforce standards, down to, like, I'll never forget when we went on a post check the first time when he became the commander, and I'm out there, I'm a senior master sergeant, I'm filling in for the chief. We get out there, and I never in a million years would have thought to done this. I was a cop for all these years. Right. We get to the gate, it's 3 A1Cs at the gate. They all line up for their post briefing. And I think they got a little, like, brief confusion on who was going to give the post briefing. Like 2 seconds, like 2 of them looked at each other, who was going to give the post briefing.
Right.
And he just stopped them dead tracks, and he was deadly serious. And he was like, for 10 minutes, he was talking to them about, the importance of knowing who is the leader, who is in charge. Mm-hmm. And he was like, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, and he was like, one of you are in charge. You're all A1Cs, but somebody here is in charge. And You should always know that before you ever leave the guard mount hut. Who is the leader? Because that's the person I hold responsible. And I'm just sitting here going, I never would have thought about that. I mean, like, yeah, somebody's, by who came in first and all of this. Somebody's actually the ranking A1C here.
Sure.
Like, I would have never gotten down to that detail. I would have came out here and just, like, whoever gave me the post briefing is whoever gave me the post briefing. And I was just
right. Somebody say it.
Who's going to give me post briefing? And that probably would have been my reaction.
Right.
But he was such a deliberate leader. And when someone, and I was just like, man, this guy, I got to step my game up a little bit. I can't just be like, I got to stand up a little bit straight now. But but he also at the same time, well, something happened to a unit member, in the squadron, the family member, he'll also be in there crying with them. I
Yeah,
remember we lost a troop to an accident, and I remember he insisted that he wear his service dress. And I remember we put the casket of that troop on the plane at RAF Mildenhall. And usually when that happens, we assign somebody to go escort. He insisted that he would be the person that escorted that airman home to his family in service dress on a KC-135 all the way back to the States.
Wow.
And that's just the character of the man, of who he was. And I'm like you said, it's hard to teach that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when people say he was, they would see things he did as soft. I'm like, no. You didn't talk to the people who got punished.
There was other signs that people probably didn't see.
Yeah, there's another side. But that's great that he didn't go out and need you to think that he was some big tough guy boasting about how tough he is, and that's all he had. He wanted you to see him for a human being. And I tell you, to this day, we still keep in contact. And he's one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked with. And he taught me a lot about that humbleness, that ability to listen to people, that ability to see past, what's in front of you and really peel the layers back. Like, what are they really telling me right now?
Yeah.
Like, what's really going on?
That authenticity shines through.
Yeah, ask questions. Ask questions. Ask questions and like, don't allow people just to give you those 5 things. I always talk about the 5 things. Don't allow people to walk up to you and be like, oh yeah, my name is Lindsay. I'm from here and I'm a cop. Great. What does that mean? Like, who are you?
Exactly.
But I don't allow people to give me those 3 to 5 things. I don't. People, I walk up there. I walk up to people still today, Airman. I'll be on base and they'd be like, hey, how you doing? Who are you? Oh, I'm sorry, so-and-so. I work at the Med Group and, I've been here 2 years. Oh, that's great stats. So yeah, great. Who are you? Let's get past that. I don't care about that. I don't care. I mean, we allow superficial relationships, and then you're going to have superficial organizations.
Oh man, and you can feel it, even if you don't know that's exactly what's going on. You can feel if something isn't genuine. It really sits with you. It makes it hard to do something day to day in these organizations.
Yeah, when I was a MAGCOM functional, after I left Lakenheath and actually made chief, I became a MAGCOM functional where I had all of the cop squadrons in that MAGCOM visited. And I always used to tell them when I walk, I said, I can walk into a squadron in 15 seconds and not only can I smell the pine sol, I can smell the BS.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't try to don't walk in here and everybody's all kumbaya all of a sudden. I'm like, I can tell when people actually get along. When you're sitting in a conference room with 20 people and they're trying to brief you on their mission, you can tell the temperature and the culture of the organization within 10 seconds of sitting down at the seat. I'm like, okay, most of these people in here do not like each other.
Yeah.
They don't even make eye contact with each other when they're speaking. They're like,
no. Man, it's what an insightful conversation to have. It's almost like you need to, before we start any kind of briefing or anything at all, let's figure out what's causing the tension. Let's just get rid of it, because we're not going to be able to work as a unit if we don't get over these undisclosed situations or feelings or whatever's happening here. Let's move past it.
Yeah, because people fail to communicate. That's the first thing, right? Yeah. Because it goes back to not wanting to be vulnerable enough to really say or to be not really say what's on your mind, right? Yeah, and then you all leave. And the part of it is the lack of connection. We have so many pre-packaged notions about each other that we just go ahead and say that's who they are. I know that's who they are. Mm-hmm. Then your actions start speaking in that to existence. You deal with people that way. Yeah. And I really don't. I mean, people consider me soft and tough at the same time also. Mm-hmm. Because I'm very tough. I say nobody will never confuse me for being a soft chief if they dealt with me. But on the other hand, I always give a lot of chances, right? You know, even now in my business, right? I've had, some bad business relationships because it's people who I gave a chance knowing that the probability of success is probably about 30%.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance on this person, even though I believe I already know in my mind who they are.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to allow that to start festering because I'm going to start treating everyone like that.
True.
So if they show that they're not the right person, then I need to deal with them as an individual and say, okay, just didn't work out. We're moving on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you start thinking like, oh, I'm going to just judge people by just my little 10-second, sizing you up. And I've had it happen. I've had people where I'm going, I don't know. And then they turn out to be the greatest person that you've ever met, and the relationship is great. So always, so people always be like, oh man, you give people a lot of chances. Or I had a business manager who was like, you need to get rid of this person and get rid of this person. I'm like, nah, I really want to help them because I don't think it's from a place of malice. It's a place of just they're unsure. It's the knowledge. They have no ill will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they have no ill will, then we can work together.
That's true. That is so true.
We can overcome all of that other stuff.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So what takeaways, a message, anything that you would want somebody to have of the story that you've presented today?
That, not everyone starts in the same place, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's one takeaway, that it is okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, empathy, and connection are 3 superpowers that every human should strive to go find in life. If you can become more empathetic, which we've already discussed how hard that is, try. If you become more vulnerable, which now that can be exercised and taught, and you can open yourself up. So that's something that's easier, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can try to look past just the 3 or 4 things that you think about somebody and expand it to I used to try to play a game in my mind about connection. How many things do I really factually know about this person? And I'll okay, I know 4 things about this person. All right, by the end of the week, it's going to be 10. And it's not going to be transactional. I got to make it really, purposeful. Absolutely. And by the end of the month, I'm going to try to know 25 things about this person, new things. That means that I have to engage with you more. That means that I have to actually naturally want to be in your space, not just come by and be like, Lizzie, tell me 5 more things. I got this quota. So the takeaways of vulnerability, connection, and empathy are superpowers. Yeah. If you're feeling 70%, it's okay. Mm-hmm. There are tools out there to get you back to 100. And, just find purpose and passion in life and be persistent at it every day.
Awesome. Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit? I want to hold up the book again for everybody to be able to see it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Why Not Me? And I have a special signed copy right here. So
you tell us a couple. So awesome. I appreciate your support, Lizzie. So Why Not Me is the book I decided to write, the day after I retired. I went on over a year journey. I'm so fortunate to get a shout out to my publisher, Mascot Books. They were so gracious in letting me come on and guide me through this process. Why Not Me was released in August. It's out on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. You just Google Why Not Me and you can find it in probably, I think now 11 locations.
Wow.
Different stores, Amazon. But the easiest way for all of us Amazoners, you can get it on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, you can email us at info@courageouslead.com. info@courageouslead.com. Our folks will send you a link and you can get a signed copy. We appreciate the support. I honestly wrote this book with the intention to sell 1 copy. And that's, this literally, I just wanted, if it helped 1 person, that's fine. We didn't write it to be on the New York bestsellers, but man, we are very humbled of the response of the book. It sold out in Orlando at our first. We actually did not bring enough books. They sold every box we bought in Orlando back 2 months ago. It continues to sell. We have a couple of book signings where people have already pre-purchased a ton of books. And I just appreciate the support. The feedback that we get is, from people that, man, we, you know, like that was pretty, I appreciate the feedback of you sharing your story. So this was a tough one. I just appreciate the support on it, and it's the encouragement for people to share their story, right? Again, I can stand on stage and I can talk about it. I can be about it. I can say but this was a conscious decision to say, I'm going to put this on paper that's going to last till the end of time. And I want people to know that it's just okay.
Amen.
It's okay. It's okay to be happy with your superpower, and it's not shame.
What a testimony. I definitely encourage everyone to get a copy. You will not regret it. It's incredible because Chief definitely goes into greater depth in this book. Now, can you tell us a little bit about CLA and how that originated?
So, Courageous Leadership Alliance, that's one of my two businesses, but it's the main business. But Courageous Leadership Alliance, I retired from the military. Just think about this. I couldn't read when I was 20. And I had a great opportunity when I was in Alaska to take my, I failed my first 3 college classes, and one was at Lake Mead. I had a great C-130 pilot who taught me how to learn. So when I learned how to learn, education became an addiction to me. So I really started reading. I really started things. And when I got my bachelor's degree, I went back to school, got my master's. I ended up getting a second master. I just loved education. I've been teaching college for 16 years. So naturally for me, when I retired, I'm like, I want to do something in the leadership development education space, which I still teach college and do those things in the education space. So I started a company called Courageous Leadership, and it's supposed to be me out speaking, and I wanted to write. I wanted to be a contributor, which I'm finally a contributor with Forbes. And that was a huge leap of faith that didn't think I would get picked up, but I did.
Yay.
And I started just me. It was just me. And then I really looked back and I said, I had this platform in the Air Force that I was very active, and I traveled a lot. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that I've met that want to be in this space. They want to be in the development space. They want to give back. So I added an A on to my company, and it became Courageous Leadership Alliance. So Courageous Leadership Alliance kind of developed into just me, and then it went into a couple of folks, and we had contracts with places like NASA doing leadership development, character development, organizational culture, a lot of these things that we're talking about. How do you infuse this into small and large businesses? And then I started finding more people who just didn't have access or a platform, who didn't have the opportunity, but they were great. They were well-trained. They knew what they were doing. And we have people who just wanted to be trained and be in this space.
Yeah.
So we started opening that up into partnerships and going, if you have a business desire to be in this space, we'll bring you on under the alliance, and you can use our platform. We'll train you. We'll teach you about curriculum development. If you're already somebody in an established company, established space, you can come on and you can already start working with us when we get some work and get contracts. So it has grown into leadership certifications. We have partnerships with a couple of great companies, RBLP. We're starting a coaching certification with the gold standard ICF here this fall. So it is just grown in 18 months into this thing. And I'm very proud to say that 80% of the people in this company that spans, over 20 people are veterans.
That's awesome.
And,
wow.
And it did not start out to be that way. But it's very proud to see veterans turn the second chapter of their life into all of those great things that they did in the military, all of those great education that they have received, and all of the experiences that they have, and show that we have something to offer the larger world, included outside of the gate. So it's just been, and I'm so happy to shout out that Lindsay will be on our platform. Lindsay and I are going to do some things at the end of this month.
Yes.
It's Suicide Awareness Month. And when we reconnected, I was immediately on. My marketing director was like, we need to get her. I would love to have her on. And I know I haven't spoken to her in like 200 years. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
We're going for it.
That's right.
And I think this is the first of many. And you're welcome to be on my platform anytime. Share your perspectives, because this is what it's about. It's a business, but it's more of a passion, and see how it's growing other people.
Yes.
And I think that for me, that's the biggest fulfillment I get every day at CLA, is to see the growth of everybody around me and the excitement that they have, that they're doing something that they always thought that I don't know if I'm ever going to have an opportunity to do that. And people are listening, which is the biggest thing.
Yes. And I feel like what is so powerful in your position is you never imagined being a Comanche, to never even imagined, I don't think from the stories, even retiring, doing an enlistment and then doing something else. But the fact that you have gone from one position to another and all the leadership tiers to where you're at now, you have made probably the single-handedly biggest impact across the military to all of these leaders who were so afraid to show themselves and show their vulnerabilities, their empathies, their shame. That has, I feel like, been broken down so much, because a lot of this starts at the top. If we don't see our leaders leading by example and being that servant to others, how is somebody else going to be able to do that? So you have done an extraordinary job of being the person, the spokesperson, it feels like, of it's okay to be you. It is okay, because you have been in a position where people recognize, oh, wow, if this person of this caliber is seeking help, it's okay for me too as well. For anybody. And you are making a huge impact on these stereotypes and being able to access the resources, and for people in the military and outside the military too. But I think it's just so pivotal for the military because we have that stigma. It is so strong still. And you are breaking that down. And I cannot tell you how much that is appreciated. I wish I wish this now would have been where we were, 10 years ago.
Yeah, but everything happens in its right time. Because I used to beat myself up about that too. Look what we're doing at the end of this month. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that a young airman and some squirrely master sergeant walking around a security forces squadron in the United Kingdom would be here talking today and on a platform trying to bring awareness to something. Then we walking around seeing each other in the hallway, wasn't even thinking about this as a space that we would be in.
No, it has come full circle.
Everything happens for a reason. And and that's what makes me, like I say, every day about this business makes me smile every day, that this is what happens every day. And I'm finding gold mines out there of people that I haven't connected with in 15 years. Another troop of mine who was a senior airman, and now she's a clinical psychologist and stuff.
Wow.
Got out. And guess what? She's going to be on a platform.
Yay!
She used to work, and I used to see her studying her books all the time in my office. And I gave her that space, even at work, to do, because I knew, I said, man, she has another calling, and she's never told me that she's not going to be in the Air Force for a career, but I know that she's not going to be in the Air Force for a career. And she's out here really helping people in this space.
Awesome. That is tremendous. I don't think we can expect anything better than to see people doing what they have been called to do.
Yeah. So I'm excited about this. I appreciate it. It's been a great Sunday morning to be able to talk to you, and it's a great, nice, crisp Sunday morning out here. I'm about to head out and enjoy some of this sunshine.
Absolutely. Well, I truly appreciate your openness and your courage to come and talk to me about this. I know it can be so difficult to open up these wounds that we've felt have scarred over, but they're still there. They're still very raw, no matter how many years have passed.
No, you take them, and that's the thing. You don't ever realize that this is a lifetime commitment. It is.
So true. That's true. Well, thank you, Chief, very much. I appreciate your discussion this morning, and I look forward to working with you more.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
All right, see you. All right.